Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and today I am joined by the very special guest, Mr. Chris Winfield, coming in from New York, actually from my old neighborhood. We used to be basically neighbors. It's pretty
crazy.
Rad. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, it's so good to finally connect.
Absolutely. We were just talking about how we have over 150 friends on Facebook. We've never actually met. We know all the same people. We go all the same types of events. You're doing stuff with Scott at the Unfair Advantage event. You're doing stuff with Todd and his mastermind, 90 Day a Year. If you haven't checked out Todd Herman, it's incredible. Scott's incredible at marketing. And you're an unfair advantage to the people in your networks, right? You're the guy who gets it done with relationships, gets these connections and access to these resources, kind of like me in a way, right? Where it's just like, there's no question. Like you just couldn't do it unless you knew the right people. I've got a saying, I don't need to know everything if I know everybody. It sounds like we're going to be friends because you know what? We seem to live by the same thing.
Actually, I don't know if I love that saying. And so it's funny because each day I try to find like one thing that I can learn or just take away. And I don't think I had my takeaway or thing I learned today, but I'm going to use that saying. So
please, rob and duplicate. R&D. That's what business is all about. I love it. You can also grab that one. That's from Dan Martell.
Yeah. Oh, Dan's another good friend. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
I love Dan. He's coming down for TNC. You going to be here?
I'll be there, and I'll be in actually San Diego again before that for Giovanni's. I'm going to be in San Diego 3 times in the next 2 months for Giovanni's Archangel Masters thing. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, I will see you then for sure. Okay, so let's hop in right into the hero's journey because I think a lot of people, they see the success and all the things you're doing as an entrepreneur and all this great stuff. And it's hard to relate to that for them. Everybody can respect you for your success, certainly, but they'll more relate to your failures. Everybody can relate to failure, but not everybody can relate to success. So why don't you give us a few coordinates, a few stories along the way, sprinkle in some failures that kind of, ground and humanize the whole story for everybody, Chris?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that I talk about the failure side a lot because almost exactly, just under 5 years ago, a company, an agency that I had started, which had grown, pretty big, and it looked really good on the outside, close to 100 employees, bunch of offices and everything. And, so it looked great on the outside. Like our launch got covered in the New York Times and TechCrunch and everything.
Wow.
And, all this stuff. And we did all these conferences and it looked great on the outside. And it was exactly like my life at the time. Like it looked really good on the outside, but I was miserable on the inside. I was in an industry I didn't really enjoy, doing stuff that I didn't really like. And I had been, the way I explain it, I'd been comfortable being uncomfortable, and not in a good way. There's a good uncomfortable, going to the gym, working out, pushing yourself and, being right outside of your comfort zone. That's the good uncomfortable. The bad uncomfortable is where you're just complacent and you're okay. And you just kind of accept, or at least for me, forget you, for me, when I just accept something and just don't really try to change that. So, and I'd been in that state for a while, and, luckily it didn't feel lucky at the time, but that company, for me at least, it imploded, and it still exists in a couple of different countries, but for me, everything kind of just went wrong. And, there were so many different factors to that. But it had just it was at that point I lost pretty much everything. And it was very just messy and all this. But the thing for me right then was that I had you're at that jumping off point, and you can either keep going and dig yourself deeper and become more miserable, or I had that choice where I'm just I'm changing everything. I'm changing everything about my life. I have no idea what the hell I want to do. All I know is that what I don't want to do. And, at that moment, I just started to really change everything. And it took, and it sounds like such a great, that sounds so easy and all this. It was unbelievably painful. But it was I look back at that time, and I look back at those next 6 or 7 months where I just focused on myself and focused on really becoming better and, you know, just becoming a healthier person. And that was, and like losing everything and having it be so painful was like, literally, I look at that as one of the best 3 things that ever happened to me in my life. And, you know, I just like and that's just one of those things, and everything has changed since then. But you know, I believe that we need those like course corrections sometimes. If it's like God will do what you can't do for yourself. In my case, I was not ready to make a change, as bad as I wanted to. So
You talk about your spirituality. Is that one of your guiding principles in your life? Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, and it's interesting. So that became you know, a big part of my life, and you know, like I was always anti-religion, anti this, and I'm still like, I'm just a spiritual person. Like I believe that there's something greater than me. Because if I'm all there is, I'm, you know, and I used to think the opposite. You know, I used to think that everything was just like luck, and not in a good way, but like, you know, that either you had to work really, really hard and to get what you wanted, or you had to be blessed with some talent or something. And not saying that neither of those things don't equal success or happiness, but what I found is that, you know, they often don't. And, you know, for me, it's very important to have something greater than me to rely on and fall back on. Now, I forget that all the time. Like right now, today, saying this to you right now is like, maybe since this morning, the first time I remembered that, since right after I wrote a gratitude list. But it is like it's a huge part of my life. And I never thought that it would be that. And I never thought I'd be, you know, talking about that.
Yeah, like for example, I was raised Catholic, right? And a really good way to not be Catholic when you grow up is to be going to Catholic school for like 8 years. You know, it's
Right.
like you get to the end of that, you're like, all right, I'm done with that. And
Yeah.
all organized religion. So I spent most of my 20s not really believing in anything. And then I realized like I've reached the capacity of what I can be as a human being. If I'm going to find anything else in my life that's worth meaning, it's got to be something outside. I had to look beyond. And then that led me to a more spiritual lane where I believe that we're all connected. So I like to ask those questions to see what, you know, where people are at with that and what they think and how that kind of affects their life. And you touched on a few things that I think are just really important to bring out and remind people is that gratitude's everything. It's a vibrational energy. You know, if you can just say, yes, please, more of that, and be thankful for the things that show up in your life, that's you telling the universe and you telling the God, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, that that's what you want. And that's what you want to continue to show up. But if you're always worried and fearful that you're vibrating that's what starts showing up, because you're telling it exactly what you want. And I have to remind myself consistently that how powerful I can be at manifesting wonderful things. And I'm doing it to myself all the time on both ends. And it's happening very quickly. And I'm just like, pshoo, pshoo, pshoo. I feel like I'm in the Matrix sometimes. I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you start moving faster in life, the universe conspires with you and it conspires against you sometimes.
Yeah. And since we're doing a podcast, people can't see me vigorously shaking my head in agreement, nodding my head in agreement. But yes, and it's so there's so many different things that you brought up that, and this stuff just lights me up so much. But one of the things is that, you know, you can manifest it in either way. And the crazy thing, and why I'm like kind of laughing, is that I know this and you know this and you know what you can do in terms of creating like amazing stuff, but we still forget on a daily, at least I still forget
every day. We wake up and it's like everything is horrible for that first 15 minutes. It's like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. Now you haven't even woken up yet. I just want coffee. Why can't I just wake up and have coffee and not be freaking out?
Oh my God, exactly. And, you know, so you mentioned another thing just with the gratitude side. So for about close to 6.5 years, I every day I've written a gratitude list. And for the last, I guess 5 months, I've written 2 gratitude lists. And one is the things I'm grateful for today. And what I just do is I just think about the previous 24 hours. So tomorrow, doing this interview, meeting you will be on my gratitude list. You know, and then I just look around like my apartment or whatever, and like just think about all the things that I'm grateful for. Because my mind is not wired that way. It's wired to think kind of the other way and think about all the things I don't have, or, you know, look at other people, compare, and all these different things. But now the second gratitude list, and this is the one that's really like just changed my life in the last 4 or 5 months, is the things that I just write down. I'm so grateful these things have happened. And then I just write out the things as if like whatever the different goals or whatever the things that I want to have happen. And sometimes those are just things as simple as, I feel so peaceful and, money just comes easily and I don't, like whatever it is, or be very specific about like goals or about things. And it's unreal how powerful that is, because that's like just another way of just reprogramming my subconscious mind. And, our subconscious minds are like GPS, like you just program in whatever you want in there, good or bad, just like you said. And it's unreal what can come back.
Yeah, it's like I always said, I'm glad I don't manifest pink elephants because they would show up immediately. There's like, if you think of a pink elephant, it doesn't just show up and trample you, because like that's seriously how fast it seems to happen. I'm glad there's like a minor delay where I could be like, no, cancel the pink elephant. I don't want it. But you said something that was really great, and I think it's worth kind of just clarifying. So you have the second gratitude list, and you speak as if it's already happened, and you're grateful that it already happened. So this is almost telling the universe what you want, that you're grateful for it, and it can't distinguish, right? It can't distinguish whether it's happened or not yet. It's going to just make it happen. And I don't believe that that's the whole picture. I think that there's that law of attraction piece, right, which a lot of people talk about, and there's the secret and all that stuff. But there's also this law of get off your and take action that a lot of people seem to neglect. It's like you can attract all you want, and the opportunities will show up. But if you're not looking for them, if you don't see that you just created that and grab it and bring it closer, or take that action that actually makes it real, it didn't matter, right? It'll just go right by you again. And you'll be like, oh, what about, I have the worst luck. You got everything you wanted and you just didn't grab it. You didn't take the law of action.
Exactly. I heard it said it really well that, God will make the bus show up, but you got to run to catch it. And like, I really like that, even though I don't really take the bus, but I can get the analogy. And, I don't believe that it is just that I can just sit here all day and do nothing and just manifest something. And, I do believe in having to put in the work. And I don't think it's also just like the interesting thing. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. So the interesting thing is when I start to try too hard and start to like want something too much. And I found that with myself this week, like really just like focusing too much and not in a good way, and not in like a easy, like expectant and just putting in the effort and all that. But like where it's like, why isn't this happening yet? Why isn't this happening? And it doesn't happen. And I think then I can get into just like outworking it. And I found that, so it's like always like this trying to come back to center. And why I also talk to so many people and love having conversations like this is because I get reminded. And what you started this out with by asking about like failures and, vulnerabilities and stuff. So when all this stuff like happened for me about 5 years ago, I made like a couple of decisions in my life, but one of the decisions was I'm going to every single day meet with at least one person. And the only rules for that were that, so I would do it. Obviously that was the first rule. The second rule, I wasn't going in looking for anything, which was the opposite of how I had been. So I would just go in looking instead, how can I help this person? Now I wouldn't say, what can I do to help you or anything like that, because no one really wants to hear that, especially a lot of the people that I was meeting with and the caliber of person, that's the last thing they want to hear, because everyone's trying to do that. But it was more just like, what can I do? What can I bring to this rather than what can I take from it? And the third was being open and honest about where I was at. And the amazing thing about that, and just like the stuff that we're talking about here, is that I started to realize that I'm not the only one who has fear, who has insecurities, who feels like a fraud, who, all these different things. So then like, it's interesting because like that stuff, I saw that you interviewed Jason Gaynard, a friend of mine, and we were just talking about this recently when he was in New York. But my favorite quote of all time is, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards, the Steve Jobs quote. And I look back at, just these little decisions and how much of an impact they've had on my life, because they bleed into everything that I do now, being completely not completely, I don't know if I'll ever be completely open and honest, but as much as I possibly can at any given point in my life, but doing that and allowing other people then to be able to do the same.
Yeah, and by the way, I love Jason. I love what you said about that push versus pull, right? That first gear hustle versus that third, fourth, fifth gear. Look, when you're in fifth gear, man, you just hit that little accelerator, you go 10 miles an hour, no problem. Like 70 to 90 is like a little touch.
Ooh, I
But in the
love that.
beginning, when you're just like, you know, like you're stalling out and getting the clutch going, that's all first gear stuff. I know, I
I
love Gary
love
Vee to
that.
death, but that's like a hustle message, right? Work harder, work harder, work harder. Eventually, you got to get into flow.
I love that.
And
I
flow
love
is
that.
third gear and
Yeah,
up. You know,
you have good
first gear is
analogy.
necessary. Second gear is very important. But if you stay there and you're trying to go 70 miles an hour, it's going to be a struggle. You're going to burn out your engine pretty quick.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, so that I love this. I want to break this down a little bit more because
Sure.
I really feel like the people listening, you know, they've all got their stuff going on, and you just talked about something that completely changed the fabric of my life. I joined a mastermind group when I was about 25. I've been a part of 25 masterminds, or maybe 30 at this point, since, and I've started 5 of my own. It's my number one tool in my entrepreneurial toolkit. The way I first started in masterminding was I literally got on a plane and went to where everybody lived. There's 100 people in this mastermind, and I went to as many as them would have me. I would go and I'd stay with them, and I would meet their families, and I would learn everything that was going on. And I would just focus on serving them. That was all I did. I didn't know how to ask for anything. I was in full martyr mode. I'm like, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And eventually I parlayed all that, you know, all those relationships into something that actually did really well. As a hedge fund I started. But that all kind of came just one thing after the other. It wasn't really a plan. It just kind of all fell together the way it fell together. But it started with that. It started with going into situations not needing or wanting anything. And I was fortunate at that time in my life. I had built up, you know, a pretty good chunk of cash doing what I was doing. But I really was coming from a place I didn't need anything. And that's hard for most people to understand. But the energy is the same. The energy of showing up in service and truly looking through conversation and questions and standards and just asking like the right questions to get to a place where it's okay. So you need this, and we're really clear on this is what you need. Okay, I've got this resource, this person, this opportunity, this connection, this system, whatever it is, that's going to help you solve that. And just doing that for a while and getting really good at that muscle. And then once you're good at that, because most people they're completely deprived in that area, then it becomes the balance, right? You talk about, because like you talked about, you're never going to be completely open and honest. That's true. There's always a pendulum swing, right? Because if you're completely open and honest, you'd be talking about your bowel movements, and you'd be talking
Right.
about, you know, the sex you had last night or didn't have, or how good it
Right.
was, and the food you didn't eat. Nobody wants to hear all that stuff. So you got to find
Right.
that balance. And the same thing is true with giving and getting. It's a balance. There's 2 extremes between miser and martyr. The abundant line is finding that balance between the two. So in the giving, however, we learn how to receive effectively. And ultimately we vibrate more of that going out and has to come back to us. So it's in giving that we receive. It's in loving that we love. It's in cherishing that we are cherished. It's in telling the truth that the truth is told to us. You know, it's in trusting that we are trusted. It's all these things that we are holding back from the world.
The prayer of St. Francis.
Yeah, that we're actually wanting to give ourselves, you know, and we can give ourselves, but we have to be willing to give them to others, because we're all just a reflection of each other. Right? We're all just mirrors for the things that we want in life. So it's just really important to dig into these. And people think, oh, you know, that's bullshit. And just how do I make more money? This is how you make more money.
Exactly. So
who has all this money you want? People.
So
people have the money. They have
love
the relationships. They have the connections. They have the opportunities. If you can learn that, you've got it covered. You got it made.
Exactly. And with the mindset piece to go with it. And it's so interesting because I used to just, and even to be completely honest, when I start talking about this stuff, sometimes I think about like, oh, exactly. Like somebody thinking like, oh, that's all bullshit or what. And now, but I'm kind of also just at that point where I don't care. Like I know for me, I know how it's worked. And just like you said, like I've proven it to myself on both sides of the coin.
It's not just you, brother. John Templeton. He says gratitude is the reason he's a billionaire. I'm going to listen to him.
Exactly.
I'm not a billionaire, but I've missed a couple times, and I think I missed because I wasn't making the right choices in that moment when I could have been a billionaire. Bitcoin's at 5 cents. Could have been a billionaire. Just saying.
I'm curious. So a big thing. So one of the things that I realized, and one of my biggest lessons, and this is, I've really leaned into this over the last year, but is how much just intuition is like everything for me. And what I mean by that is not my like just initial first thought about somebody or, you know, like rash judgment or anything like that. That's usually wrong, to be honest. But the intuition that I'm talking about is that feeling that I have where I know is all right. So like if I'm in, let's say it's a relationship, or like staying in a company that I knew wasn't the right fit, and feeling that and feeling that. And it's like I'm pointing to my stomach because it's like my gut or my heart, and like going against that. And or on the opposite side, when I really feel something and I'm like, wow, this is the right move. And then every time that I don't, that I try to ignore that, I lose. Like that's been my biggest, like one of my biggest things. And it's become so much more crystal clear, for me lately, but it's wild. It's really, really wild. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts on it. Not that, man, so, I know you're interviewing me, but I'm curious. I want to
No, this is good. It's conversational. I think the reason people, I've been on a lot of podcasts where they ask the same 8, 10, 15 questions every time. And it gets old. Like
100%.
Let's be a little more off the cuff. So what's present for us right now, if we're showing up in service as vessels for a higher good, is you're talking about your intuition, your gut. We've evolved as humans to trust that. Right. That's what kept us alive. And before we even had the capacity to really understand, like a neocortex that was formed, like we had a gut feeling where you just act on it and we would live or we would die. And over time that got really good. And still to this day, we have 10,000 pieces of information that our gut, quote unquote, can process in that instantaneous blink of an eye. The funny thing is that it's not always wrong. If you feel off about something, you don't need a good reason not to feel off about it. Like I'll give an example. My roommate and I, his name is also Brad. Some people think we're married. It's kind of funny. Got in an argument recently because I ordered food for takeout, and takeout shows up and the lady hands it to me and I'm like, thank you. And then she starts, saying, oh, you gave great directions. She starts like trying to start a conversation. She's trying to sell me like some water thing, or I'm like, I don't have any interest in this. So Brad's at the door too. He starts chatting it up with her. I walk away because I'm like, I don't need to get pitched by the delivery lady. And I go back to doing what I was doing, and I'm eating, and like 10, 15, 20 minutes goes by. He comes back. He's like, this lady's great. I invited her to the mastermind. I'm like, you invited her to her house? You don't even know this lady. I just had a weird feeling about her. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. So I know what the reason is now, looking back, right? Can't connect the dots, is that we need to have a discussion about like boundaries and like how I feel about people. I'm at the point in my life where I'm not looking for any new relationships. I'm just not, especially with ones that I feel are like, pushy or just needy. Like I'm just not trying to attract that kind of energy. And he was upset because he's like, you don't trust my judgment. I brought this one to the mastermind. I brought that one. It doesn't make a difference, man. It's just something that we need to check in on before it's like we're inviting this person into our shared space, right? That was what I was upset about, is like, you didn't really consult me. And I felt weird about this lady. So, I'm sure she's a lovely lady. She was putting off an aggressive energy and it was needy. And I didn't really want to invite her in a house. She's a stranger, so that was kind of where I drew the line. So it's like finding where your intuition, like where you can trust that and where you can't trust it.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, I'm okay with being wrong. Like she might turn out to be amazing. And, he's responsible for that. If it's not, he's got to deal with it. I'm just like, dude, I didn't invite this in. So you can handle it, good or bad, or if it works out great, awesome. If it works out terrible, great. I'm okay with either. I'm just telling you how I feel.
Exactly.
And, the gut thing though, like you don't always need a good reason.
No.
In fact, it's more likely you're going to live through the scenario and then look back and be like, oh, my gut was right. Even 100%. If it was wrong initially.
100%. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily that. And I think that's the tricky part, because your brain wants you, or other people want you to have to rationalize something and have like the backing evidence and,
Sure.
and many times
we're trained to do that in society. Oh, we need a reason for it. No, it's okay just to say no to something. It doesn't feel right. That's good enough. You don't need to know why. Move on to the next thing. There's plenty of great opportunities out there that don't require a whole lot of thought.
So it's interesting because you mentioned like with relationships, one of my rules that I came up with in this last year was that, so I meet a lot of new people, and, and then there's a lot of other people, how it is, like coming at you and all this. And like, there's just so much, like, for any of us, like so much vying for our time. And so my thought though, is just like, so how I feel is always the most important thing. And it's the most important, not just for me, but for my bank account on a daily basis, for my family, for everyone around me. So I have to protect that a lot. I don't watch the news. I don't read the news, any of this. Like, and
Yeah,
but
people hate me for that. They're like, "Oh my God, did you hear about what happened? I almost died." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I didn't read your newsfeed today.
well,
I apologize."
the thing is, because when I'm like with the news, for me was like I wasn't doing anything about it. So
Right.
I can serve and be much better in all these other ways, but I would like read about like whatever the latest outrage and just like it's like outrage porn and like
Yeah.
that. Like so
No, it's
anyway,
seriously.
so what I realized for myself was with people, especially if after 2 times, if I feel worse or, if I don't feel better after talking to them or being around them after 2 times, I just cut them out. Like, I'm just like, I can't have, and it's worked really, really well. And it doesn't really matter who that is. So like, it's like a real simple little rule that I created for myself. It's not perfect, but it's kept me surrounding myself with really, really good people.
Well, and if we approach this scientifically, because there is, science, that's my training, right? I was a biologist in a past life. I wanted to be a doctor, Dr. Hart, the cardiologist, in fact, super egoteric, but whatever, all good. The scientific method is you're literally you're coming up with a hypothesis and you're testing the hypothesis.
Yep.
Right. And then whatever closest to, based on the data that comes back, whatever's closest to reality and makes the most sense and is repeatable, that becomes a working theory. Like gravity is a theory. It's a pretty close theory. We're pretty sure about if we walk off a building, we're going to fall to our death unless we somehow sprout wings. It. So like that's your working hypothesis. Like if I don't feel good about somebody twice, awesome. That's my thesis now. Like, and you're going to miss, and you're going to be okay with, you're going to have 2 bad interactions with somebody who could have been a really good fit for you.
100%.
But that's like the 2% of the time. And then the rest of the time you're like spot on. It's okay that you missed a couple and maybe they'll circle back some other time.
Yeah.
If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But guess 100%. What? I'm never going to meet 7 billion people on this earth. No. I'm never going to do it.
And the reason I have it at 2 is because my first impression can be off. As I said before, there's like the saying contempt prior to investigation. So I could be somewhere and like see somebody, like say I'm speaking or something, like there's somebody in the audience who looks like miserable and I'm like, I hate that person. Like, why are they? Because I'm thinking they hate me. And,
it always comes back to our ego and like how fragile it is. It's so funny.
Oh my God. And then the person, like, I'll meet the person later and they'll be like, oh, you're so great. I'm like, oh, I love this person. Like,
so you're susceptible to flattery.
100%.
Your ego is getting triggered.
Oh my God.
Sounds like you're human. Moving on.
That's like that's the thing that I try. And I wish that was not true, but there's other examples, but that is a true one. Like, because my mind will like say there's 100 people in a room or in the audience. And there's like that one person who looks like out of it. I'm ignoring all the people that are like happy and like shaking their head. I'm like looking at that I'm not really, but in my mind I am. So it's like I'm just saying this more to remind myself that is not where I need to focus.
But for people listening at home, it's like we all have an ego. We all have a thing that's like built into our subconscious that protects us because it's looking for what's wrong. It will ignore everything that's going right in your life and find the things that are wrong because those are the things that historically would have killed you. So you got to get good at just saying, hey, little ego gremlin, I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me. Go in the corner. I got this.
100%. So my favorite reminder with ego is easing God out. And where it's again, like, and this is why like the God or whatever your belief is important or because if not, like, then it's all about me, and it's not like that person who looked miserable or whatever could be having a terrible day. They could also just hate me and that's fine too. Like that's okay. But so it's just, and I say these things sometimes just to remind myself. And because if I don't have conversations like this, then I get stuck in the same thinking, the same thoughts. So
yeah, and I've been writing a lot lately, and one of the posts I put up was about depression, how I feel like depression in my life has been a choice. Like I don't have a functionally disabled brain. I don't have anything that's like really screwed up. So I was able to cure my depression. And I think a lot of people, maybe there's a small percentage that really can't and they need some sort of intervention. But I think a lot of people just buy the story of, oh, you're depressed, you need to take these pills. And that screws up more people than anything because they've abdicated responsibility for their state and what's going on. So I wrote this whole post about it and I gave people actionable tips and it went crazy. Like thousands of people read it. I got all these emails. It was awesome. And like 99.9% of it was super great. Actually, one lady's like, you saved my life. Like, I read this today and I was thinking about killing myself and you saved my life. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And then you get one email about how I'm a horrible person and I'm totally disrespectful and blah, blah, blah. Where does my mind go? Does it go to the 999 people that are perfectly happy with this post and I saved one life? Or does it go to the one person who decided to be butthurt about it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I was waiting for the butt.
So it goes to the butthurt, right? And I'm like, how can I just not focus on that? You know, how can I just let that go? And I just catch myself getting caught up in it all the time. It never stops happening. But I know how absurd it is now.
And I think that's the difference. And I think it's just, for me at least, with all this stuff, it's just that the perspective. So like the time of suffering, and because that's suffering, like focusing on that is, you know, suffering, or the time that I'm going to allow myself to do that, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, you know. 100%. So for all these different things, and like perspective is just such an amazing thing, because then you remember, like, all right, how would I have handled this a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, you know? And then like that stuff, like remembering that for me is so important, and having people close to you in your life that can like point that stuff out is so important. That's why you talk about like masterminds, or, you know, having people like, so that they can remind you, because we don't want to focus on that. We don't want to realize how much it's hard for us to see our own progress sometimes.
Yeah. So Chris, I just wanted to say, I'm really grateful for the reflection, because I think I needed this conversation today too. It's been a lot of stuff and launches and everything. I know you got a million things going on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the million things.
Sure.
Because ultimately you got some cool projects that I want people to know about, and you're helping a lot of people in the world. So let's kind of start with, you know, first and foremost, you're working on the Unfair Advantage. You know, you got Todd and Scott and a few really great people. Can you tell us a little bit more about that event?
Yeah, sure. So the term Unfair Advantage came from actually my mastermind that I'm in with Todd Herman and Jonathan Fields and Ryan Lee. We call it the Dad Mastermind. We all have kids, and we all do similar things. And we were in that about a year ago, talking. Each person gets a half hour. Everyone can give feedback. And they said to me, they're like, all right, enough focusing so much on like the personal development stuff and productivity, because I have a business around that. Like, you have to teach people how to do what you do, because for us, when we describe you, we call you our unfair advantage. And I was like, so explain what you mean. And I'm very good about hearing feedback. And now, you know, this is a big thing in my life, and implementing on that with people I trust. And they're like, well, with relationships, or with just figuring out how to get stuff done so quick, or get media coverage, or all these things. And a big part of that is because that's what I've invested, just like you invested lots of time and resources in myself and relationships. So with the Unfair Advantage, what it is it's a 2-day event here in New York City. And the reason I do it in New York City is because that's where all the media is. It's also why I live here. And I teach people how to, you know, figure out their message, how to also like pitch, but really how to have confidence to know that what you're doing needs to be heard. And I think like, so a lot of people come thinking it's like for the, you know, just the media connections, or just how to get their message out there. But so much of it is, and just like, you know, with all this stuff, it's the mindset side. So coming and realizing and finding out that influencers and super successful people in media, they're regular people, and they need you as much as you need them. And, you know, that they're just normal, and that you, many times, it's not about having the best pitch or the slickest delivery or anything like that. It's about being a real person and doing what we're doing now, and having a real conversation, and really talking and figuring out how you can help people. So what I do is I bring in all these different experts and things like that. But then at night, I have a party where I bring in like 30, 40 top people in the media, like people that are impossible to get in touch with, and editors from Entrepreneur Inc. and, you know, all producers from Dr. Oz, all these different things. And people talk to me and have real conversation, and amazing stuff happens. every single time. And, then the next day I teach people how to then leverage all that stuff. How, like you mentioned, Scott Oldford, he'll be coming. Scott and I used to work together. We're working together in a different way now, but he's so good about leveraging media and making a lot of money from the media.
Right, because you can get all that attention. If it doesn't amount to a hill of beans, it's over, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah,
so how to leverage all that stuff. So it's just amazing. Such a great, amazing group of people that since everyone has been hand selected, like you can't just buy a ticket. So yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I'm doing.
So what are the dates, Chris?
That's February 7th and 8th.
Right on. And that's in New York City.
Yep.
We got our launch ending on the 4th. I don't know if I have to hop on a plane and come hang out with you guys.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Super fun. We'll connect about that offline.
Yep.
So all right. So you got that. You got the book coming up. When's that due to be released, or do you have a date yet?
So that's like under the radar. That will be, that's
you gotta call your shot now in Marvel's land. Let's do it.
That's about 2 years down the line. So
2 years. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the focus, and doing more and more TV. So I really enjoy doing TV. Just been doing lots of interviews, just spreading this message. Here's the big thing that I believe is that and why I feel so passionate about what I do. We live in such a connected world with so many disconnected people. And social media fools us into thinking that we are all so connected. And no matter what, as honest as somebody is, just like we're saying, you're still seeing their highlight reel, and you're seeing the best parts of their life. And I just, from talking and having real conversations like this with people, I know that, what I'm seeing is not the real thing. I know, even with me, and I try to share a lot of the ups and downs, but there's way more ups than downs that I'm sharing. And, just how it is, because if I know, who cares about, no one wants to be around that depressed person all the time. But, so I just believe so much that relationships, and I know what it did for me, meeting and continuing to meet with at least one new person every single day. It's like, I don't even know, it's close to 2,000 people or something like that at this point.
Wow.
But, and just making that an effort, or making that a commitment to myself and being accountable, and how much that changed my life, not just from the connections and what that can do, but also from the insight, and to hearing, sitting down with a guy who's worth, a few billion, and hearing him say how, he's miserable, or same thing, and saying I'm happy because even though I have fear, I push through it. Or it's just all these different things, or just all, how it goes. It's just having real conversations, getting to really know somebody. It just allows you to think about yourself so much different. And it also allows you to, for me, it tears down all these limiting beliefs, because I didn't grow up with money. So I had all these different beliefs about people with money and this, and then I got money, and it didn't magically cure me or anything. And so constantly though, especially I'm in New York, I'm in, where I am the most is around lots of very, very successful people that are real people. And that is such an important thing to know, because it just changes everything. And that's the thing that I try to get across to people about the power of just connection.
So I have a question. So we know a few really big super connectors in common, Dan and Jason and Todd. And, who are some of the ones that you look up to the most? Who are the people, Dave Meltzer is a great example in the sports world of a mentor of mine that just gets it, and he's aligned and all these beautiful things. I'd love to hear more about those types of folks, and who you really look up to in the super connector world.
So it's interesting. So most of the people that I look up to and am influenced the most by are all dead. And so, and what I mean by that is the people that honestly really changed my life are Wallace D. Waddles, Dr. Joseph Murphy, Florence Scovel Shinn, and Neville Goddard. And I say that, and not in a, not taking anything away from anyone, because I learned so much from people. But, and even here's the crazy part. So I was also brought up Catholic. I hated church. I hated the Bible, anything. The stuff that's all the stuff was in the Bible. Like Jesus said everything, like, because, and I only learn about that from these other books, or, you know, from like with the Buddha or any of these things. Like, it's unbelievable. So it's like, it's really weird, because I've been doing a bunch of interviews because it's National Mentor Month. And I say that a lot. Like, my biggest mentors I've never met. I never will. They're dead.
The chapter's closed too. Like, you know, the ones that are alive, the chapters aren't over yet. They might turn out they, like, you know, started touching people or something.
Well,
it comes out every day in the news. Every time I stop watching the news for a month, I come back and 3 of my favorite actors are off the air. What's happening?
That's part of it, is then, you know, because I have a chance to also meet.
It's safe to like Wallace D. Waddles, because he's dead.
I know, exactly. And there's never been anything, like, even Napoleon Hill, there's like somewhat controversy whether
now they're all saying he's a weirdo, and it's like,
right. And
okay,
luckily he was never one of my ultimate fear, and I have no idea if he was real, whatever, but
we don't know, right? It's
too long for me. So
I couldn't get into it, honestly. Everybody says Think and Grow Rich. I've read it 9 times. I've read it once, and I'm like, okay, desire, got it, I understand.
Exactly.
Thanks.
So it's just interesting. Like, that's for me.
You know, we should work on a book together. You ready?
Yeah.
Bible 2.0. Updated, expanded, revised with more Yahweh.
I love it.
More fire and brimstone. King James did it. Why not us? The Bible 2.0. We got this.
Winfield, Hart. Yeah, Hart, Winfield. Yeah, I love it. So here's the thing, though, and I'm curious. One of the things I want to ask you are some of the books that because books, I read a chapter of a book every morning, because I always wanted to read more, and I never would do it, because I'd be like,
I got you, bro.
I'd sit down. You have the list?
Oh, I got them all. Yeah. Well, I'm reading a lot about cryptocurrency and trading and getting brought up on that, because we launched the course.
Yep.
I've been helping people with basic trading stuff. This book I love.
Yep. I have it.
Principles by Ray Dalio.
Yep.
Over here on the shelf, Mindset, Carol Dweck, who, you know, Todd is a big geek on. He's got the 90-day year stuff and all that. Last Safe Investment by my friends Brian and Michael. Brian Callen and Michael Michael Ellsberg, rather. Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards. Like, if you want to take somebody who was a complete introvert and just learn to crush it, like the stuff that natural extroverts do unconsciously, they don't even realize they're doing it, that she's studied to the point where she's like, I've got this geeky behavior lab and figured all these pieces out. Now you can learn them too. Yeah. That was a brilliant book for me. I took some really incredible questions from that too. There's an amazing book over here called Integrity Selling for the 21st Century. If you're into sales, that's a really great book by Ron William. Fantastic book. Of course, anything by Tony Robbins. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I've actually, for fiction, I've been reading this book series that was recommended to me by Tucker Max over at Book in a Box. Colleen McCullough, the First Man in Rome series, there's 5 of them. They're all 1,000 pages long. I've been through 1 1/3 of them now. I started reading them around Thanksgiving, and I'm so geeking out on this, because it's just a completely different era, and it's all fiction, but it's based so close in reality, and the details are just perfect.
I'm gonna write it down.
It brings Rome and Roman life to life. It's Colleen McCullough. The books are the First Man in Rome series.
I'll tell you mine. All right. So Wallace D. Wallace, so The Science of Getting Rich, that book literally changed my life. And it's not just talking about rich from a money standpoint, but just also leading a rich life. So that was 1910. I think 1926 was The Game of Life and How to Play It, Florence Scovel Shinn. So I've recommended that book a lot recently because I reread it. And I recommended it to my friend Nick Onken. You probably know Nick. Nick's like a celebrity photographer, like Justin Bieber's photographer, and Usher and Lewis, all these different people. And he just texted, I recommended him like a week ago, and he's like, I just finished reading it for the second time. It's like, it's changing my life. And then The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy is just unbelievable. Oh my God. Like, I've read all that guy's books, and anything by Neville Goddard is just amazing. Oh my God. The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz And also and actually we're friends, but his book, when I first read it about 5 years ago, Choose Yourself by James Altucher, had a huge impact on my life, and especially the stuff about the daily practice and having like a strong routine, which is a lot of that also, can be traced back to like Wallace D. Wattles, which is James actually how I found Wallace D. Wattles. So those books though, I mean, I honestly, like, you read those books, your life will be completely different. It's unreal. Like, and I say that with no hesitation. If you're just open to it. So
yeah, it's amazing. And I appreciate those recommendations. I wish I had more time to read than I do, but I also, like you, I spend at least 30 minutes a day. I'd rather skip a meal, which I do. I don't eat breakfast anymore. I haven't eaten breakfast in 5 years,
yeah.
with very few exceptions, but I fast most days. And I just spend the first little bit reading, right? Readers are leaders, skip a meal, don't skip reading. And it just puts my mind in a different state. It takes me out of whatever's bouncing around and it puts on paper. I also like to write and journal in the morning. If I just even write a 1 page down by hand, it just takes so much stuff out of your head, puts it on paper, gets it out. It's like just clearing the decks for the deck. It's so important.
I write, so the morning pages, right? So Julia Cameron. So, and I've been doing that, and actually she calls it the monkey mind, getting your inner critic. I don't know if she calls it the monkey, whatever, but it's writing 3 pages out. So, but many times it's just one. Or I'll just write out how I want my day to go.
So, Chris, I know we got to keep it tight on this interview. I don't want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to wrap this up in a way that I never tell anybody I'm going to do this before we get on the show. We talk about seeds and crops, and crops is an acronym. You've been so generous with sharing your time and your resources with us. What are some ways that we can help you move your mission forward faster? And the way we do that is we connect and catalyze resources, opportunities, people, and systems. That's the crops mentality. And how can we do that for you?
Yeah, I love that. I think the biggest would be the only social media that I like is Facebook, my personal Facebook. And it's just Chris Winfield, ChrisWinfield. I'm very active there but not active in a way of just like pushing stuff out but really building relationships. And one of the things that my team had challenged me to do a Facebook Live every day for 30 days. And I started doing it, and I was like, you know what? After day 2, I'm like, I'm just going to do it for the rest of the year. And I've been doing that every single day. It's only been 14 days, but I'm going to do it for the rest of the year. And it's been extremely inconvenient, and it's been amazing. And what I mean is, like, I didn't realize how much travel I was doing, like, right when I started this. So I did like a couple from the air, like having zero time but I've been doing it. And so I would love to connect with any of your tribe and have them just get involved and join me on Facebook.
Yeah. So check out Chris Winfield. This is just Chris Winfield, facebook.com/Chris Winfield.
Yep.
Okay, that's right on. Go check out Chris on Facebook, connect to them, say what's up. If you're in New York and you want to check out his event, is there a page for the event?
Yeah, it's events.chriswinfield.com.
Right on. And that's the Unfair Advantage event. There's going to be some amazing heavy hitters from publishing media. Go with a giving heart, and hopefully you'll get in, because it's apparently small events. And the best event I went to last year was actually really small too. Adam Bornstein, he did 212. Adam and Jordan are just incredible. They're like the powerhouses behind Tim Ferriss and a bunch of other really great guys.
Yeah. So, okay. Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. 212 is awesome. I had a blast at it, and I've been talking about some other stuff too. So
wow.
Yeah, cool. So people can reach out to you on Facebook. You got your website, chriswinfield.com. Go to events.chriswinfield.com if you guys want to check out that. Chris, you're awesome, man. I really appreciate the candid convo, and I'm glad that we both could light up the world just a little bit more today.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and just feel more energized even more. So after talking to you, I'm so glad we connect, and I know it's just the start.
Yes, sir. I can't wait to have you back on the show. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about, and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you're listening to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.